Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Politdigm Podcast. My name is Red, and today I'm joined by my co-host Alpha.
Yes, I'm here.
And today we're back with another episode, as usual, as is our weekly duty. This is episode 37. I haven't done that in a while. Haven't said what the number of the episode is in quite a bit. I noticed the other day, so I decided to do it today. This week is another me week. I wrote another article, and I decided to write an article about something which, surprisingly enough, we had never touched upon. Don't know why. Just I guess it didn't come up as simply as that. There's no real reason why we hadn't talked about it yet. So I decided to write about the prison system since it's something that I think is important to talk about, and I just decided to do so.
And
Of
I something we share a lot of views on.
Yeah, we used not to, I guess. But at some point, I guess our opinions converged, or not really converged, but I feel like I pointed out some aspects about my view, which made you go, "Yeah, you got a point." And then at some point, I just noticed that you were in agreement, so I was like, "All right, dope."
But from what I got, it was basically like we were we had the same things in mind,
Yeah.
but weren't explaining it well. So it looked as if we had diverging opinions,
Yeah.
which was not the case.
Oh shit! Hold up. Sorry. Oh, I'm yawning. Anyways, before, of course, we get into the episode, if you enjoy the episode, make sure to support us over on Patreon. If you can't support us on Patreon, check out our websites to learn how you can support us in non-monetary ways. Whilst you're at it, you can also join our public Discord community so you can talk to us and interact uh, with your fellow comrades, aka the other viewers. And of course, if you do so and so happen to support us over on Patreon, you can submit questions for the end of each podcast episode, because at the end of the episode we do a little Q&A when we have questions. And also check out our social media platforms where we keep everybody up to date with the latest Politdigm news and whatever we are working on. And also don't forget to check out our main channel where we are doing other type of content. So if you like other stuff other than podcasts, go check that out and learn what we got to offer you there. We just started a new series, reading a new book. We're now on our third book with Politdigm Reads, so go check that out. Yeah, let's get into the article I wrote. So
Let's blow this pop stand.
what? Let's
You
blow
don't
this.
know the reference. I'm sad now.
But yeah, I when it comes to the prison system,
It's fucked.
it's a topic which I really care about for several reasons. One
It's fucked.
is that people have usually a very twisted and fucked up view of what the prison system should be. And I mean, I feel like
Especially Americans.
there's like levels to it. There's like those who like kind of mindlessly advocate for like the death penalty and other like horrid penalties in that way. Then there's, I guess, the more common person who will just say, yeah, prisons are just a part of society, and that's it. They don't really have like a strong opinion. They just see it as a sort of like necessary evil without really understanding how the prison system works. And then there's people like me and Alpha, or maybe even you, the listener, who looks at it and goes, what the fuck? What is this shit?
Guys, what the fuck are we doing?
And is able to look deeper into it and recognize that the prison system that we have today is tremendously barbaric and outdated. In fact, I'd say that it's never been up to date. So there was never a point where it was per se necessary. But clearly, as the time goes by, it becomes more and more visibly ass. So yeah, I decided to write an article about this because I thought that it's important to basically, I guess, share our opinion on it. And I mean, that's what we do in every article at this point. Not like we're journalists. So at the end of the day, these are just us trying to share our opinion and try to justify them with facts.
Logic.
Yes. So I wanted to. I got into several parts of the system of the. I call it throughout the article always the traditional prison system, just to clarify what exactly I meant. And there, I started off with talking about its flaws and some kind of inherent contradictions that it has. Its inherent contradiction is that it alleges, and emphasis on alleges that it exists to minimize and suppress crime, yet there is empirical evidence that shows that in fact it creates more crime and has absolutely no actual impact on lowering crime rates. So
It is, once again, are we talking specifics here? Like, I definitely agree with that statement when it comes to the
I have
American,
numbers. Don't worry, I'll bring them up.
yeah, with the American prison system.
Yeah. And so this is an inherent problem because if one thing exists for a single purpose and then seemingly it fails tremendously at it, then clearly something is wrong. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Explanatory.
Of course, when it comes to actually solving criminality, there's a lot of what's the word variables at play,
It's
and
very fucky.
when it comes to taking somebody who has committed a crime and trying to basically turn them into somebody who won't recommit a crime or reoffend, you need to have several actions, or you need to do several things. And it's clear that in the traditional system, what we have is basically a warehouse of criminals. It's basically just a place where criminals go to live for a period of time, or in some countries forever, so that they're basically removed from society without any real intention to do anything. It's just basically a place where criminals go to be stored. This is very wrong for several reasons because first of all, a person who commits a crime is instantaneously, their entire humanity is removed from them because you're treating them like an object, which you can just store away in your cupboard, and you're not really considering the effects that you're having on these people, because if you do in fact intend to ever insert these people back into society, you have to take into account how you treat them in this environment, because if you treat these people like absolute dog shit, the probability that after they leave the prison system they are tremendously and mentally screwed up is really high, and then
Will
you
most likely fall into the habits that led them to do these
yeah.
things in the first place.
And in many situations, it becomes even worse because people are now even more scarred and have gone through even more traumatic situations. So there's clearly the traditional system is tremendously flawed. It's clear that for example, in the U.S., it's the country with the highest incarceration rate. It's an abomination, the American prison system, and it's clear that as incarceration goes up, there's never been a correlating evidence that shows that criminality is going down. Yes, there might be less criminals on the street, but that does not mean that criminality will stop magically. Because that's not, you can't just expect that to work. I looked into three studies. One showed that since the year 2000, that there has been almost 0% drop in overall crime rate in relation to the amount of incarceration. So it basically shows what I just said, which means that, just because there's more people in prison or more people are being put in prison does not mean that the crime rate will go down. There's no relation between those two values. And then there's I have another study from the National Research Council, which has found no conclusive evidence that a greater reliance on imprisonment significantly reduces crime. Again, same result. And then there's another research which I looked into, which was specifically regarding to people who then leave the system, which is that when people who have been incarcerated then are inserted back in society, show tremendous amounts of mental health complications and issues. They have a form of PTSD, which is known as post-incarceration syndrome. So these are people who basically have, been through such traumatic situations, which, basically leaves them with PTSD. An example of this would be, for example, a really sad story. I don't even remember when I heard about this, but I think you might have heard of this too, Alpha, of like this guy who got I believe he was wrongly convicted and was put in solitary confinement, which is not even a topic I went into this article, but we could just do an entire article on solitary confinement. But that, solitary confinement basically functions as torture. It's putting a person in this small place with I think no light, if I remember correctly, and then you're just there, just slowly losing your mind. And that this person, developed just developed a lot of mental health issues, and that when he finally got out of prison, he had lost a lot of years in his life and had been so mentally scarred that no matter how much money or how much, how much he sued the American justice system, there was nothing that could get back his sanity, essentially. And that's really sad, for example, in a country like the US where there are so much falsely convicted people. It is, to me, terrifying to imagine that if you are in the wrong place at the wrong time, from one moment in the other, you can lose your entire life. And the reality is that this happens primarily to people of minority groups, of course, as people know. And that's terrifying to me. That is genuinely like so
And
scary to
people who
imagine.
are financially challenged.
Yeah, it is. It's like, it is like, can you imagine, Alpha, just like be chilling and suddenly you're like swatted, and like that to me is I don't know if that's, to me, if that's almost worse than death. Like I don't know how to. I feel like, to me, being falsely convicted and being put in prison is about the same level of like mental anguish that I would be in if tomorrow if tomorrow I woke up and I had to, like, in emergency, go to the hospital and I found out I had like terminal cancer type of shit. That's because at the end of the day, you're basically, well, my life is over. I basically just spent, in my case, 19 years of my life for nothing because some guy is bad at his job and now I'm fucked. So I don't know. When it comes to that part, I didn't actually talk about this in the article, but it's scary, and it's scary. It's scary in my perspective, and it's also scary to imagine that other people have to go through that situation. But
There was
anyways,
a very famous case of, I think it was in 1980, of if I'm not mistaken, five adolescent African American boys. Their ethnicity will be imported later, who were wrongly accused of assaulting a woman that was running at a park late at night.
yeah, I think I've heard of
They
that.
were all teenagers, and they were given extremely heavy sentences. There was even a case of one of the boys being considered to be put to the death penalty by members of the public, including Donald fucking Trump, who started a petition to put these boys in the electric chair.
Of course, you did.
Yeah. And one of them spent most of his time in solitary confinement as a way to try to protect himself from the other prisoners. And he wasn't even at the place of the crime. He was just called to the precinct later to help a friend because he matched the age and color of the description of the assaultant, who wasn't even correct.
Yeah. It's funny because like in this article we could have also I could have also gone into the actual justice system, of course, which is another
Can
cesspool of,
work.
yeah, it's another can of worms. But I decided not to because whilst fixing the justice system is equally as important as fixing any other system that we live in, that we have in our lives. But I guess I just decided to talk specifically about the after rather than the process of getting into
Yeah, yeah.
prison,
The ultimate fucking conclusion.
because
The the you are guilty.
let's
Go.
be real, like, yes, the justice system is horrible, but if the prison system actually worked, people, this is kind of sound kind of weird, but people wouldn't even mind being convicted, because if the prison system was actually just and humane, yes, it would be annoying, but you wouldn't be like, oh, my life is over. It'd be like, well, this is a hell of an inconvenience. I'm probably going to lose several years of my life, but I'm not going to go through hell and torture and other words which I can't say because I don't know if YouTube and other platforms will like it. So
They definitely wouldn't. Crimes
it's,
with rape.
yeah, and it's related to dropping the soap. So yeah, I had another study that I put in the article is one done by the American Psychological Association. Also, fun fact: as much as I like to look at these studies and hope that they are truthful. When it comes to psychological studies done by Americans, it's always take them with a kind of what's the word,
Grain of salt.
with a grain of salt. So thank you, because America is famously very weird in the way that they do a
And very
psychological.
biased.
Yeah, they're very biased, and everything is very separate. They separate everything. Like if you they separate you for your fucking haircut, it's insane. That's America. They like to segregate people. Anyways,
They, they have a history of separating colors. That's why they're so good at the Rubik's Cube.
Jesus Christ, Alpha.
What?
Anyways,
You didn't know that joke?
no. Uh, they
I'm
s-
surprised.
they showed a significant percentage of incarcerated individuals reported mental health concerns, with 64% in jail, 54% in state prison, and 45% in federal prison, expressing such issues. Which this comes down to what I said before about how, in many cases, when people leave the prison system, the probability that, or in fact, this has been shown that at times, people who the what's the word? Fuck, I'm screwing up. Sorry, guys, I'm tired. The rate of reoffending, right, after leaving prison is very high, and many a times the the relation between those who get incarcerated for committing a crime and then the percentage of people who then leaving reoffend, or even reoffend with a higher with a crime that's considered more extreme. I'm forgetting the correct terminology. Uh,
Yeah.
is there? It exists, and this is due to, for example, this specific case with mental health. People who leave the prison system, they are not given support. Not the way they should. They're left completely mentally broken. In many cases, these are people, like you said, Alpha, from already very poor communities, and so you're basically just left out in the open. You're left at the mercy of of a system who does not give a shit about you. And so the probability at that point of you not having, for literally just to be able to survive, the probability that you'll have to go back and commit another crime is high. And so that's just a system that doesn't work. If people are being put in the prison system and then are just going back on the street to commit more crimes and then go back in the prison system, you just have a vicious cycle of people being imprisoned and then leaving and then being imprisoned again. And it's just a vicious cycle of violence that's completely unnecessary and stupid. And at least that's my conclusion, is that when I look at this, I just go, right, it's clear that the system is really doing more harm than good, because as much as if you can consider that, oh, but people who committed crimes are being kept from the streets, sure, but you're also creating a system which basically breeds a whole population of people who are mentally scarred, and that's not okay. That's just awful. And then if the conclusion is that those people go ahead and commit crimes again, then bruh, what's the point then? It's not really working. So what do we do? What is there to be done? The answer is very simple. And as I put it as the title of the next topic in the article, rehabilitation is key. Because if you have a person who has committed a crime, there is reasons there that they did that for. And no matter what the reason is, there are ways that you can make sure that that reason is either removed or ameliorated, or whatever the fucking English word is, made less worse or whatever, to the point where they would have less tendencies or less reasons to have to commit a crime. This can either be causes done, for example, because of mental health issues, or could be because of drug use. So you can give these people help to be sober. Or, for example, if it's because of financial reasons, all you have to give is education, financial support, and then there's no reason for that person to start robbing people unless they somehow get adrenaline from it. But then you need mental health consultation and a therapist. So basically, what I'm trying to get at is that what you need is help, and not to be punished. Because that's the main goal of our current system, is to be a punishment, right? You did bad, you get punished. And it's clear that doesn't really work. That doesn't solve any problems. It just relocates them, or in many cases, just perpetuates a system of suffering for a large chunk of certain groups of the population. And so this is again, the key is to, instead of doing punishment, you give people help. However, there is, of course, an issue with giving criminals help, is that a lot of people don't want that. And I'm not even going to look too deep into it. I'm, for now, just going to simply look at, for example, the day-to-day person, right? If you ask a person on the street what they think about criminals, they're probably going to say that they're monsters, that they do not belong in society, that they need to suffer, that they're horrible, horrible human beings. And some will even go as far as say that they need to die, right? As I said in the beginning of the episode, when it comes to, for example, the death penalty. And this is horrendous. And of course, then you have the media, who perpetuates these ideas, who anytime they talk about criminals on the news, it's always this super sensational situation where everything is super extreme and these people are horrible monsters and they need to pay for their sins, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. And that they are irredeemable monsters who need to be punished, and all that. And this creates a mindset which basically says that anytime you commit a crime, and by the way, committing what counts as committing a crime is not one thing, right? It can be several things, but at the end of the day, it boils down to going against the system, no matter if it's for a good reason, a bad reason, whatever. If there's a system in place with certain rules, if you don't follow those rules, you're considered a criminal. Or in some cases, you're considered a billionaire, but that's a whole different problem. But the reality is that where people are collectively looking at anybody who commits a crime and completely ripping away their humanity and saying, no, you are not human. You are a shit under my boot. You deserve nothing. And of course, this is how you then lead to having still the traditional prison system that is so heavily focused on punishment, because and I put it this way in the article, and I kind of fucked with it. I characterized or described the current prison system as state sponsored vengeance, because at least to me, in many cases, that's how it feels like. It's just vengeance that is done, by the state. And in
Let us
many
not
cases,
forget the slavery aspect too.
yeah, I'm getting there. I'm getting there, Alpha.
We're
Don't.
getting there. Fair enough.
We're getting there. I'm not even going into the. That's when it comes to capitalism. I'm not even going to look into the economic part yet. I'm just looking at the social part yet for now. But the reality is that, shit, I got lost. What was I saying? Shit. Right. State-sponsored vengeance. The reality is that when you talk to the day-to-day person, the way that they react towards somebody committing a crime is vengeful, is completely and utterly just this, to me, disturbing. It just shows that this person has no regards to that, or no empathy, that there's no empathy, because they have been taught that criminals deserve no empathy no matter what they have done. And I understand that in some crimes that have been committed, it is harder to have empathy for the criminals, but that doesn't mean that they need to be executed or need to be tortured or need to be murdered, whatever adjective, not adjective, verb. And so this is clearly a problem. How we solve the mentality regarding criminals, that's a whole different kind of worms, which I didn't get into. But the reality is that we must look at why people become criminals in the first place to understand why criminality exists. And people don't do crime because they felt like it, because they were bored on a Sunday afternoon and just thought themselves, hey, look, what would be really funny, would be really, really awesome if I went down to my local grocery store and stole some food just for the laughs. No, that's not how criminals operate. That's not how people exist. The idea that people do crime just for the sake of crime is a fantasy, and it's things that we see on TV, for lack of a better explanation. The reality is that we're so used to, for example, seeing heists or criminals on TV as this super fancy characters which do crime because they want the fame and stuff, which has completely changed our perception on what crime is. And the reality is that in most cases, a high percentage of people who commit crimes which are just for the sake of their survival, like stealing food or trying to sell drugs because they need to get money, stuff which they do because they need somehow a way to survive. And people don't really get that. They don't. That's, I guess, at least my opinion. But it's in most conversations that I'd have with people, it seems that most people don't really understand that, and they just think that criminals just have some sort of malice in there, that they're born evil, that they are doing that, that they do the things they do because that's how they were born, which
Yeah.
is
I
and
can actually flex my biology muscles here.
yeah, go ahead, Alpha.
For those who don't know, I had to do a group project for a biology class I had. It took me 3 months. Me and my group, we did a bunch of research, and one of the things that we understood is that when it comes to personality, some aspects of a personality can be traced back to things like genes, not the ones that you wear, of course,
Yeah,
but
although having tremendously tight jeans on your
do not.
private parts can tremendously change your mood.
Yeah. But when it comes to personalities, first of all, personalities are not inherited, at least for the most part. It's a little fucky. And second of all, they can be affected by your genes. However, your genes don't just come out of nowhere. They have to do with past experiences. For example, you have two very specific genes called the CDH13 and the MAOA gene, which both of them exist and are very important for our normal functions, but when they're dysregulated, they can be associated with problems with learning, uh, psychopathy, uh, bi- being bipolar, having problems with depression, ADHD, aggression, etc. However, there is only a direct correlation with these genes and a specific part of the population, and that's a specific part of the population which was abused as a child. So it's not like they were born with these regulated genes. It's the life that they led influenced the formation of these genes.
Thank you. Which goes perfectly into what I was about to say, which is that the people who live a life of crime, the glorious life of crime, have had, or do not actually have a glorious life at all. They have had miserable lives. They have had horrendous conditions in their childhood. These are people who have lived in poverty,
We're
who
talking about
have,
petty crime, not like tax fraud. Those guys
yeah,
can go fuck themselves. At least,
uh, and so there's it's most people who commit crimes, and of course we're not looking at billionaires. Those just need to be taken their money away. That's enough of a punishment, uh, at least in their perspective. We we must acknowledge that most people that commit crimes are people who have had horrible lives, who have been treated as human trash their entire lives, who are people who came from, for example, other countries, who immigrated because their countries had horrible conditions and then came to a new country. And that new country has some quasi-fascist ideals and basically wants to torture them because they're horrible leeches who, oh no, they want a better life, how dare they. And so it's the system is what causes these people to go down this road. However, before we do look into the system, we of course must acknowledge purely what happens inside the prisons, because that's what I'm doing right now, is looking at the rehabilitation part, which is if there are certain conditions which these people went through, which caused them, for example, to have child trauma, to have drug dependencies, these issues, you need a robust system which allows these people to rehabilitate themselves to be able to come back into society. And as I said a few minutes ago, that has to do with mental health. Not mental health. That has to do with, for example, having therapists, with having education, counseling, groups that will help you with the drug addiction. It has to do with these basic things which, in general, people should have, not just in prisons. People in general should have access to these amenities. Because they're a necessity, and they should not be a business. They should be available for everybody. It allows you to create aka not a real, I wouldn't call it a prison system, I would just call it a rehabilitative system, a system which takes these people who have committed these crimes and looks at the root causes, right? Looks at the reasons why they did and tries at their best to make sure that these people have no reason to ever commit these crimes again. That is how you create a system that actually takes criminals and is able to make sure that when these people come out of this system, that for example, reoffending, or there's apparently a term for this, which is fuck, where is it? Let me see if I can find it. It's recidivism. I think
What?
it's like when people commit a crime and then do it again, or like after coming or after leaving prison they do it again, and being able to lower this would actually lower the crime rate, which means that if somebody commits a crime then goes through the system and never commits a crime again, you're going to slowly have less and less people that commit crimes. However, of course, we must remember that even if we would abolish the traditional prison system and establish this rehabilitative system, crime is not going to disappear. It's not going to magically just stop existing. Because as I just said, the problem is the system. It's the system which creates and traumatizes people from their birth into following into having these lives which are not good for us, the people who do not commit crimes, and it's also not good for them. It's not good for anybody. And so we must look at the system. Of course, the system that we live in is capitalism. This is we know this. This is part of the lore of life, and we must, of course, to be able to solve these issues caused by the capitalist system. Of course, we need to do the same things that we have to do to the prison system. We need to have access to therapy, to healthcare, to education, to actual like economic a stable economic system, which capitalism is not. So the entire system has to change into a socialist one, of course. Of course, I would like to add, which even in socialism, in a perfect world where capitalism just finally dies for good and suddenly we become all socialist, crime still would exist. There's always going to be a few people who would always go against the system no matter what. It's not going to be perfect. Is this because they, like I said before jokingly, is this because they were born evil? No, there are always going to be small communities which have which develop, which are some way against the system because they think that they deserve more, or that, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, with generation after generation, after, let's say, in true 300 years, after completely removing ourselves from the capitalist society, would life look very different, and would people completely almost forget the way that they used to live? Probably. Can I say that with certainty? No, I don't know. I can't look into the fucking future. But all we can do is look at the way that society works now and how humans relate to each other, and understand that there are root causes, and that there could, in the beginning, always be some sort of criminality, because there will always be militias or groups that are against the current system. Of course, as time goes by and with well done education, hopefully, and that would help those type of things to stop. But it's also not to just boil it down to, oh, some people always be evil. No, don't do that. That's dumb. Simply put, that's dumb. There's just either two options. Either you are, for example, somebody who is religious and believe in the idea that some people are born evil. I do not share that opinion, because there are no scientific facts that show that people are born evil, because that's not exactly scientific terms to begin with. And it's not like you can just prove that some people are just going to be born and are going to start causing chaos. It's also a very American and like sort of TV or Hollywood way to look at it. Just this
Yeah,
idea
I
that
mean,
somebody's
Riverdale passed around this idea of the murder, the psychopath gene, if I'm not mistaken, which was the CDH13 gene, which I was talking about. And while we were researching for our group project, we just came across a bunch of articles saying like, "Oh, is this real?" And I remember my colleague who was in charge of searching this specific gene just having a fucking mental breakdown because she couldn't find any specific scientific papers because it was all clogged in this sea of
mumbo jumbo.
badly written articles on fucking Riverdale, which also doesn't wasn't helped by her search history, but that's another topic.
Yeah, but there is like you said, there is like that idea of like the psychogene, that like people are just like that every
Or evil.
like psychopaths are like inherently violent and that they're going to cause mass murder. No, like, that's not. There are people who might be psychopaths, but then it's clear that there is a system that nurtures them into having that type of action. But people aren't born killers, which again I can only attribute to a sort of mass false consciousness that we have developed due to films and other type of media, which has twisted our way of looking at humans. There could be there's studies about that for sure, which I have not read, but from my experience, it's clear that, and from knowing, for example, conversations that I've had with you, and even with my mom, who is a psychologist, who it's clear that the media does not reflect the reality at all in many cases, and that there's a lot of dumb ideas and stereotypes which are passed to just kind of create this romanticized yet very what I call it, kind of, I wouldn't call it barbaric, but a very
Draconic.
disgusting. What?
I would call it draconic.
Yes, that's actually the term I was looking for. Thank you. Yeah, kind of like a draconic way of looking at life, and like just saying like there's good and evil. No, that's not. That's again, that's a very like heaven and hell type of situation. It's a very idealist, or very sort of religious form of way of looking at life. And as an atheist, I do not fuck with it. Very scientific terms there. I do not fuck with this. Imagine that being at the end of like a scientific paper. In conclusion, I do not fuck with these findings. Anyways, what was I saying? The reality is that our system, the conditions, the material conditions that we live in, is what causes people to turn to a life of crime. And just because in a ideal situation, if we are able to change those material conditions into ones, for example, defended by socialism, the idea that there would be crime existing at some point should never demotivate us to just saying, oh, then there's nothing we can do because some people will just be evil. That's what I was trying to get at. We should never ever feel demotivated just because we have this idea that some people will just be bad and that there's nothing we can do. It's not true. There is always something we can do. And to kind of picture and how I wrote it in the article is that we need to create a rehabilitative system, which is so good that at some point it, drastically lowers crime rate, but then at the same time, in parallel, that is just a small step in a larger race, let's say. As we do that, we also should be fighting for the abolition of capitalism and the establishment of a system, a new one, which is, has actual equality and equity and free education and free healthcare and all these situations. And as we do that, the rehabilitative system should, which was once so good and so needed, should almost become not necessary.
Obsolete.
Yeah, obsolete, because if you completely remove the material conditions which cause people to be criminals in the first place, you're not even allowing criminals to exist, not because you're killing them. It's not the fascist way of doing it, but it's it's basically going, right, if there's a cause and effect, and if we remove the cause, the effect can never happen. It's very, at least for me, it's very simple to, oh shit, sorry, it's very simple to look at it in that way. So of course, creating a rehabilitative system is important, but it should also not be the end all be all. And that's, for example, I would like to dive in now into the
Yeah, the rehabilitative
capitalist.
system would be like a band-aid over the overall problem, which is the material conditions.
Exactly, perfectly said, Alpha. Thank you. Good job, buddy.
Thank you very much. I'll accept my cookies later.
Well, later I will accept my medal.
This,
There shall be cake in the celebration.
where's the tea?
Where's the cake? But now we go into my aisle when it comes to economics. Before that, I want to like draw a little bridge from exactly what you just said. For example, in social democracies, for example, in Scandinavia, even in the Netherlands, these are things which have been done. These rehabilitative systems, which have been created, and the evidence, the results created by them are amazing. You know, the way that crime rates have gone down and the way that these things happen, it shows that these systems work. However, in a social democracy or a welfare state, you have you have the material conditions of capitalism, which are not good, and then you, like you said, you keep trying to put some like band-aids, a little piece of gum, like maybe like a popsicle stick to try to keep the whole thing from crumbling. And whilst it on the face in face value it does lower crime rate, or and all these different systems does make it better, you're not solving the underlying system, because the underlying system still exists. There is still the capitalist mode of production. There's all these capitalist systems which still are in place, which still cause these this misery. Of course, in the case of social democracies, like I talked about, like I think it was 2 weeks ago by now, the famous thing which social democracies do, which most of Europe does, because most of Europe is social democratic, is that they do the neo-colonialism, or the colonial thing that Europe loves to do, because Europe just loves colonialism. It gets their dick hard. Sorry, I have no other way to say it. And so they're like, yes, so let's not extradite, let's export this capitalist misery to the global south, where we will destroy half of the planet. Because, it's the way they do things. And so, yes, in face value, it seems like there are, for example, in a country like, let's say the Netherlands, there seems to be a lower crime rate, and there is. But for every percentage, let's say that a crime rate goes down in the Netherlands, somewhere, for example, in the African continent, there is a percentage of crime rate that goes up because of material conditions which are so horrid caused by the American neo-colonial economic system, that it really just makes you question if it's really, at that point, if it's really working out. Because if you're just, like you're shipping the misery from one place to the other. That's how social democracies work, and how Europe has been doing it for a long ass fucking time now. So there's that aspect. Of course, we mustn't forget that whilst there's this aspect, there's also the what which Alpha mentioned before, which is the slavery part, which I haven't even talked about, other than
Jesus
Alpha mentioning it.
Christ.
Because of course, throughout all this thing, we can advocate for the abolishment of the prison system and for the abolishment of capitalism, and I do, and I think they should just evaporate into the atmosphere. We mustn't forget that there is somebody who very much would like to keep those systems alive. And that will hates the idea of these systems being abolished. These are the people who benefit from these systems. Who would have fucking guessed? It's almost as if this is not like all of the world's problems, which is always that there is a majority of people who want something, and there's like the 1% who is like, nah, and we're like, the fuck you mean, nah?
Like, let me read this. I'm so sorry, because this is something that I've talked about a lot, in my friend group, and especially in my life outside of Politdigm, because I do have that.
Really? Damn.
You know the
I just live in this channel every day. Like
and
I'm
you know the fucking 13th
I,
Amendment, the one that
yeah.
abolished slavery. Let me read that out real quick
Yeah,
for
it's in the
anyone.
article, don't worry. I read that I wrote down the phrase of the 13th Amendment in
Yeah,
the article.
but I just gotta say this: like, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. You have prisons in the south of the United States of America, literally called Angola,
Yeah.
where the prisoners are made to pick cotton, and the prison guards ride on horses. Where the fuck have we seen that?
I find it funny. You know how like anytime an American like hears the word communism, their instant reaction is to say three things, right? They either say Cuba, or they say Venezuela, or they say Gulag, right? There's like their thing. But then they forget that like specifically the Gulag thing, they kind of forget that they have it too, right? They know that? Because sure, it has a different name, but a prison system where the prisoners are forced to work is not
You are literally, you said in your fucking constitution that this thing was so horrid that
yeah,
no human being should be subjected to it. And now you
unless
turn around, you say, oh, unless they are incarcerated, at which point they can be
to
subjugated to these horrid
yeah, to
conditions,
anything at
which
that
means
point.
that which just means that from your point of view, they no longer qualify on the same scale and level of humanity
Yeah,
as the other people on your fucking nation. You are literally saying, if you are in jail, you are not a person.
America literally did literally did the meme of slavery is bad, but and then it's like
However,
shut up, die, no, don't finish that sentence for the love of fuck, please don't, no, no. But yeah, it's they literally did that. They America does not consider criminals to be human beings. Like they're slaves. They're literal slaves. And whilst the American population can, in most populations under the capitalist system, can be deemed as wage slaves, at that point they don't even have the right to wage. They're just slaves. It's completely if a worker of a member of the working class already has their humanity stripped away every day, they have to wake up at a horrible hour to slave away at a job that they hate just to be able to survive, being inside a prison and having to do that without even being, you know, earn a dime of respect is horrible. It's literally reducing people to machines, to nothing but a tool, and that is the most disgusting thing humans can do to each other. It is horrible, and of course there's a economic system that likes this, because of course why the fuck would the 13th Amendment exist? Because they wanted to abolish slavery because it was deemed bad, and there were people who wanted it. But if slavery disappeared, the American economic system would fucking collapse. So of
that's
course
why
they
they
had,
fought a civil war to keep it.
yeah, so they had to, you know, in the at the end of the Civil War, they had to basically come up with a half-assed solution, which is sure, slavery was abolished, quote unquote, which even those who were supposedly freed from slavery, we're not talking about the prisoners, never actually were, in a decent and actual correct way to do it. Let's not even forget that slavery is legal in America. It is. It is, because that. Why the fuck do you think that the incarceration levels in America are so high? Because the more incarcerated people you have, the more slaves you have. The more slaves you have, the more money you can generate for
It's
with.
literally free workers. You can use them to do whatever the fuck you want.
America is so cooked. It's insane. That country is going to implode one day, and we're going to be like, oh no. Anyways, so it's
America is so powerful, the only way it would disappear if it killed itself.
literally
That's literally the premise of the fucking Civil War movie.
that's literally the premise that like Engels and Marx talk about, even in the Communist Manifesto, which is that capitalism is so horrible and has so many contradictions that it'll literally just fucking implode because it's just a system that wants to kill itself. Anyways, the
Yeah,
point
I'm pretty
is,
sure I'm pretty sure there's a quote that I've sent you multiple times of an author, if I'm not mistaken, he's an author, who said, "How the fuck could a man wake up at 6 a.m., drive to a job he hates, do nothing for his life, go home, eat shit, piss, and sleep, and do it all again for the rest of his life?"
yeah, it's if like I said, if workers if the working person can already be attributed the moniker of slave, in this case a wage slave, because they're slaving away at a wage. What are prisoners then?
Just
It's
slaves. They're just fucking slaves.
Yeah. So, but of course, there is like every single piece of indignity and suffering that exists in the capitalist world. Of course, there's an economic reason for why it happens, and there is an incentive for it to keep happening, because there are people who make so much money with the prison system. In the case of in America, it's a privatized prison system in many cases. It's there's slavery. There's a whole kind of factory going on in these prisons, like the famous number plate thing that is usually depicted in Hollywood films. So there's an entire economic incentive for the prison system to keep existing. And when that happens, no shit that every American politician doesn't even look at the idea, or even wake up in the morning and imagine the idea of a rehabilitation system, because they would lose money. And how dare you, I lose money? That can't happen. How dare I, lose some of my money for the better, for society to be better? I would never. How could I? I would never do that. So it's the usual situation. It's the usual situation where we're met with a sort of a stunning realization that, yep, I might very well have these awesome ideas, and I still do, but it's clear that there's an entire fucking group of people, very powerful people, and powerful in the economic way, and also in the defense way, which do not want that shit to happen. It's it's very complicated to hope to have, at least in my case, I can only put it that way. It's very hard for me to have any hope that these situations will be solved in a reasonable way, when the people keeping the system afloat are not reasonable in any fashionable way. How do I conclude this? I don't know. The reality is that humans, while not, I wouldn't say that scientifically there is no inherent value for humans, but there's no inherent value to anything, if you want to look at it that way. So it's, but the reality is that humans are humans, and if we're all equally invaluable, we're also equally valuable, if that makes any sense. And there is no one person who is somehow less deserving of their life because they did something which their material conditions drove them to do that. And I'm sorry, but if you look at a person who, because of horrible conditions in their lives, were driven to commit a crime, and instead of meeting them with empathy and saying, this person needs help, no matter how horrible their crime is. In many cases, when it's a very horrible crime, like the ones that rhyme with grape and other stuff like that, these are people who need help. These are people who are not well in their minds, and you should not look at them and go, die. You should look at them and go, this person needs to be helped, and we need to help them. Because Nothing ever gets solved with looking at a person and go, you must die, you must be tortured. No, that does not solve an issue. That just perpetuates an issue and just keeps it going for the rest of eternity. The issue is that we don't have the rest of eternity. Humanity is finite. No matter how much we try to act as if our planet is infinite, and humanity is just going to be on the face of the earth forever. If we keep looking at life this way, of not valuing anything, not valuing the environment, valuing each other, etc., and keeping capital and money as the supreme god of life, and saying we must do everything in the name of in the name of money, and fuck everything else, and fuck logic, fuck science, fuck everything. We just need to accumulate wealth until we extinct ourselves, or make ourselves to go extinct. You're a moron. I'm sorry, but I literally have no way to put it. You're a person who has never had an original thought in their lives, and who has been so heavily propagandized and has so much brain rot that they can't even look at a human being. They can't look at somebody like them and go, this person is like me. That is, to me, that is disturbing. How do you solve this? Of course, you need education, you need years of deprogramming when it comes to propaganda. But these are things that are not achievable through just crossing your fingers and going, hey, I hope this happens. There needs to be, action. There needs to be, people need to group up together. They need to voice their opinions. They need to go to the streets and cause ruckus, and be loud, be annoying, stop traffic. More importantly, when you, for example, I guess people don't really think of this, but they when they look at it, for example, a protester which blocks a highway, like the farmers did a few weeks ago, where they would take their big ass tractors and just stop an entire highway. Why do you think they did that? It's because it stops capitalism. If people can't go from point A to point B, they can't work. If you stop trucks, the entire economy just stops, and suddenly those who are so afraid of losing their money, they finally listen to us, because we suddenly are grabbing them by the nuts, and they aren't quite liking it. And I start to feel like I'm every week repeating myself, but the reality is that these problems are all caused by a global system that we live under, which does not prioritize well-being in any way. Yeah, prioritizes the well-being of a few people, and that's the problem. It should prioritize the well-being of everyone collectively at the same time and at the same level, because there's no one on this planet who is objectively worth more than others. And if you think so, then, buddy, you got some issues you got to clear out, because you're either like a white supremacist or some other horrible thing which is not natural or normal or based off of any logic.
Yeah.
Sorry, went a bit of a rant there. I got a little
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
I got a little annoyed. But yeah, I whilst I've talked about the industry more, I guess these episodes are never formal. But I would like to touch upon, and here I want to have more of a conversation with you, Alpha, as we end this episode. We don't like when you talk to people in your day to day life, and specifically when it comes to, for example, crimes and the punishments done to criminals. Don't you just feel like people don't give a shit? The people are just they'll look at each other and go, "Nah, this person is trash. They deserve to die."
Thankfully, I have surrounded myself with people who do not, at least from what I've gathered, believe that because you have committed a crime, you are less human.
It's I can't say the same, unfortunately. I mean,
I
I'm
mean,
not,
we have had a conversation specifically in a case of in Portugal where a man and his I think his wife killed the man's daughter and the wife's stepdaughter basically, and then fed them to pigs, and they were each given 12 years in jail, if I'm not mistaken.
Jesus
I mean,
Christ.
we were a bit fucking outraged because we were, excuse me, you fucking kill your daughter and feed her to pigs, and you get 12 years as the killer, and like 7 years as the accomplice? What? What do you mean?
Yeah, I think that to me, like,
Then again, you go back to thinking, oh, but this is the place where they're putting them in. It's these fucking institutions that just turn you inside out. So,
yeah, and it's funny because like I've always had to be. I'm going to try to like dismantle usually the arguments that I have when I'm confronted with people that have these very, to me, draconian. Thank you for helping me out back there. Uh,
welcome.
Ways at looking at these issues. When it comes, for example, a person who for example, defends the death penalty, I look at them and go, I try to find a middle ground, right? Because usually that's how you need to have these arguments is try to find a middle ground, hopefully, or having the hope that this person will adopt this middle ground as their new way of looking at things, and then you can find a new middle ground, and and slowly move them to a more humane way of looking at life. But usually, when I look at a person who's like, no, for example, somebody who has been, who murdered their own children, in that case of that story, they need to die. They need to be killed. They need to be put in prison for the rest of. They need to just be, straight up executed. I try to find a middle ground with them and go, if this person is so horrible, then why are you granting them the sweet release of death? Because if this person is allegedly so horrible, then wouldn't you want them to suffer? Not, again, it's not that I agree with that idea, but I'm trying to, picture them a different solution. And they usually go, yeah, okay, that does make more sense. If a person commits murder and then instantly gets killed, I mean, that person doesn't really have a time to regret it, and the family of the victim would probably rather think of this person, instead of being killed, they probably would like more to imagine them in prison, rotting away, and being tortured, et cetera, et cetera.
You're still fucking draconian.
Yes, it is, but usually that's even the idea. I'm trying again. There's you need to do it in. You can't just radicalize a person to an opinion, a
Yeah,
completely
I know. I know.
opposite opinion like that. So that's usually how I do it. Then, when it comes to a person who has this idea of this person needs to be tortured, blah blah, I then pose the counter argument of, but what will that solve? Will that solve a sort of revengeful, a vengeful feeling that you may have? And they go, sure. And I go, is that normal? And they go, I don't know. They probably won't be able to answer. And then I pose them the idea of, or do you want justice or do you want vengeance? And they won't be able to answer. Either they will answer straight up vengeance, and at that point, I'm like, I give up. This person is crazy, and I'm scared of them now. Or if they go, no, I want justice, then I go, then wouldn't it make it more sense that you make sure that this person is never able to commit this crime again? And then either that person from that idea will then go back to being like, all right, kill them then. I'm like, fuck, wrong. That's the wrong conclusion. Or they'll go, all right, maybe there needs to be something else. And then that's when you present them with the idea of, all right, so if this person had clearly mental issues because the regular person doesn't look at their own daughter and go, I'm going to kill you tomorrow. I'm kind of sick of you. You kind of, you cost me money. You're constantly annoying me. I want you to die. That's not a normal mental a strand of thoughts that nobody has. Nobody
This is
that's
why I don't want to have kids.
the whoa. What are you alluding to, Alvin? Are you going to kill them?
My lawyers
All
have
right.
told me not to comment. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
you're not in prison for the bank robbery, so I'm guessing your lawyers are good.
Oh, you're
Anyways,
fucking great.
sorry.
The devil really got me the good ones this time.
Yeah, but the reality is that you know, fuck. What was I gonna say? I'm
I
so-
don't know.
I was talking about how that these people are there's clearly something wrong with them, And of course there's people who are gonna say then, all right, these people are then inherently evil or blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, there's no people who are born that way. If they've been so they've been such victims of like religious propaganda, then the conversation is probably over there, because you can't convince somebody like that there's no inherent evil in the world. But if this person doesn't think that there's inherent evil in the world, there's a lot of ifs in in these scenarios, unfortunately. You could always say it like, all right, these are people who have gone through traumatic situations. These are people that are not well or might be under the influence of drugs or might be God knows what, right? These are people who need help, who need to be who need to go to therapy, who need to have years of counseling and help to make sure that this person goes from somebody who is capable of murdering their daughter to somebody who hopefully can live a normal life, never kill anybody else again, and most likely will in a similar way to that they would probably be in prison suffering from the conditions of the prison. Instead, they can live their entire lives probably just having this huge mental anguish of like, I killed my own daughter. How could I have done that? And because I mean, let's be honest, there's no therapy that can solve the mental or the anguish that you would go through with having the idea of, oh, I killed my own daughter. That shit just won't go away. So
I hope not. Holy shit.
I mean, so then you finally come to the conclusion that, okay, you finally, instead of
Like
torturing
there is
this
a
prisoner, you were able to turn this person into a citizen again, into a person who can live a normal life, who you're sure or hopefully will you'll take every step to make sure that this person can never commit a crime like this again. And if what you're thriving for, if what you truly want is to know that deep down this person deeply regrets what they have done, and that for the rest of their lives they'll have sleepless nights because they deeply regret having killed their own daughter, then be sure that that will happen, because there's no way anybody who is mentally sane, who's gone through years of therapy, can just magically make that go away.
I
So
mean, fucking Buddhism has a great story about this, and please, I'm not the most knowledgeable about this. I might be incorrect on one of the aspects of what I'm about to say. If I am, please do correct me instead of just flaming me, because I am not the smartest. So, but if I am not mistaken,
yeah,
there's this guy that kills monks. Okay, he's a
okay,
monk killer, and then he sees this guy walking down the road, and he goes chasing after him. But no matter how much he runs, he can't catch up with the guy who's just walking. It's because it's the Buddha. He can't reach the Buddha, and the Buddha shows him enlightenment, and he converts to Buddhism, and he's walking with the Buddha after being converted into one of his monks, and he goes to a village where some of the families of the guys that he had killed beat him with a rock or something, and he goes to the Buddha and says, "I am trying to atone. How can I earn their forgiveness?" And he just said, "You can forgive yourself. You are not entitled to other people forgiving you."
yeah,
And that's basically it. Like, you can live your life having done something terrible and trying to atone for it by doing something better. That doesn't mean that that thing has to go away, and that doesn't mean that the people around you need to forgive you. But that also doesn't mean that you don't need to leave to stop living your life. This guy killed other people, and still he was good enough to be a disciple of Buddha.
yeah. I think that sums up this episode perfectly. So I'm not gonna go any further than that. I think that the true, at the end of the day, the only thing that I can ask for when looking at this specific topic is that if your opinion is that people deserve death or suffering, take a step back and question why. Look deep inside yourself and try to understand why you would have those ideas. Where do they stem from? Do they stem from actual rational thought, or is it because at some point somebody taught you that those ideas? Try to self-reflect, yourself. Go to therapy, maybe. Therapy is important. It helps you work through a lot of
People
things
that
which,
should rather commit crimes than go to therapy.
yeah, I mean, look at, like, there's look at the, for example, the school shooters and stuff. These people who have these,
Ah,
like,
shit.
who have like these very violent ideas and and want to commit these violent actions, if these people, I mean, I'm not saying that's going to be possible in many cases because the material conditions simply do not allow that, but in an ideal world where those material conditions would exist, where for example, let's say that somebody right now is listening to this podcast, somebody who tomorrow is thinking about doing a school shooting,
Please
and
don't.
please don't, but
Go
if
to
they
therapy, mate. It
if they
helps.
listen to this podcast and take and even second guess what they're about to do, which sometimes all it takes is an extra second to think over things and go, maybe I was wrong and maybe I should go to therapy. It's again, it comes back to those material conditions, and it's important that having inherently or nobody has these inherently evil thoughts, as we've said several times in this episode, that it's not a thing. So there's underlying causes, there's traumas, there's lessons that you may have been told by your parents that might where it makes you think those things. So if you feel like you do somehow have these sort of violent outlooks on life, and it doesn't have to just be in this topic, any topic, right? If somebody on the street fucks you over, or literally in or bumps against you, and your instant reaction is, I want to beat the ever living shit out of this person, then take a step back, because these are people. That's a person just like you who might be having a bad day just like you. Just try to, it's very hard to say, just try to look inside yourself and have some humanity, because sometimes it isn't as simple as that, unfortunately. And I mean, the reason why people do have the actions that they do is because the conditions never, the stars never align for them to be able to do a otherwise. But it's always important to try to find people who haven't achieved that level of brainwash, or whatever you want to call it, and try to stop them in their tracks. And I think, with me and Alpha and Politdigm, I think that's the best we can do, obviously, is to try to find those people who are a little bit of fence sitters, because at the end of the day, it's in many cases it's better to be a fence sitter to being somebody who's already been fully radicalized to having these super violent thoughts. But sometimes all it takes is taking this one person and going, hey, why do you have these thoughts? Why do you think this way? And try to slowly nurture them into a much more human way of looking at life, and a much more peaceful and less violent way. And I think that's very important. So I hope that throughout these episodes that we can at least save one person from being a school shooter. I don't know. I mean, that would
All
be
the other kids with the pumped up kicks.
if
Better run, better run.
honestly, I think like when I listen to like larger creators and they say like, oh, I received like an email saying like how I saved somebody's life because they were in depression or something like that. If one day, if we ever receive an email like that, and like showing like, because like at the end of the day, I don't give a shit about money, like I don't care. But if one person sends me an email and goes, hey, I was in a very dark place in my life and you helped me find hope in a better life or in a better humanity, that first of all, it's going to make me cry.
Shit, I don't need that. I just need someone to say, I got slightly amused by your comments, and that's enough for me.
And so,
If
and
someone tells me, hey, you saved my life, I'll probably have a fucking breakdown, I think.
yeah, and like I would probably have a mental breakdown. I would probably cry, and I would probably print that email out and frame it, and that would be worth much
It was
more.
payment from her.
I would probably it'll be worth. There's no money that could ever amount to that action. There's no money. It's the best thing that somebody
There is
who,
no money for a life.
yeah, li- life is I wouldn't say sacred, but in a religious form. But it's a there's no money. Money is worthless. Money is a made up thing that we made. And life exists. It's tangible. It's material. And money is just gobbledygook, which we let govern us. So yeah. Hope you enjoy this episode. If you were thinking of doing a school shooting, call your
Don't.
local therapist.
Don't. Don't.
Um,
Yeah.
and if you like our content and would like to support us, you can do so over on Patreon, or if you wish to do so in non-monetary ways, you can check out our website and see how you can support us in alternative forms. Of course, you can join our community over at Discord. The link is below, or whatever the hell you are, just go to our website. You can find it. Where me, Red, who is the person who is responsible for that type of content regarding Politdigm, links and stuff. I put everything everywhere, so the probability that you'll find it is large. It won't take you long. But yeah, if you want to talk with us, if you want to just rant about random shit, we're here. Hit us up. It's free. However, if you wish to do so, or happen to also support us on Patreon, you can submit questions to the podcast Q&A, sorry, where you can ask us questions. They can be personal, about politics, whatever. We'll try to answer them. We can also debate us. That's going to be horrible the day it happens, but whatever. But yeah, follow us on our social media platforms. Check out our be up to whatever we're up to, and that's it. That's all I have to say. Do you want to end this episode, Alpha? Alpha?
The reality
Reality's closing in.
just leaves me sad.
Reality,
But
the
yeah,
walls.
the best thing we can do is understand why it's not good. Be good people towards our fellow human beings and just try to do better. That's it. That's basically it. Just try to be better.
Right. Thank you, Alpha. I'll see everybody in the next episode. Goodbye, everybody.